Hello and welcome to This Is Not What I Signed Up For, a podcast for first-time managers preventing you from sinking by teaching you how to swim. Today, I am joined by Rob Rudy, and I'm really excited to have him with us. Rob's had the privilege of growing several companies. He started in the textile business, where he moved a family business from $3 million up to $20 million in sales. That's quite an achievement, Rob. And then the company was acquired and you became the COO for the parent company, valued at $200 million. That's quite a jump. Well done.
Yeah.
Since then, Rob's worked in various roles from COO to president, and he now advises companies on building next level leaders, actionable strategies, and then embracing change in the business. So I'm really excited to have him with us and to talk to us about today's topic. Rob, welcome.
Thank you, Ross. Pleasure to be here.
Great. Rob, I always go into a icebreaker right at the beginning, and I want to find out from you, what is the worst piece of advice you've ever received in terms of management, or what's the worst mistake you've made along the way?
Boy, I would probably have several to choose from. It's not just one. And I think that's the history of most leaders. If they deny the fact that they haven't made mistakes, they're not telling you the truth. I will tell you the worst advice I had was when I did move into a more senior role in a fast-growing company. I was told by several people, a few rungs higher, you know what, Rob, the company's really not ready for any change. So just keep your head down. Just work with the flow of the company. Don't try and speed it up. I think we're fine. Now, to the listeners and viewers of this podcast, we all know change has always been upon us. It may be faster now and it may be deeper now, but it's always been there. So in my gut, honestly, Ross, I felt like, I don't know, is this a major signal they're sending me that they don't want me to come in? And they really did originally say, we need you to help build and change some of the culture. We need you to actually go deeper into the org. And then once I got there, I don't think we really want to go that fast. It wasn't the best advice. Yeah. And the other leaders, they were waiting for that change. They were hungry for that change. So although the advice was there, and I certainly took it at first because I wanted to make sure I understood the landscape, it was pretty clear I had to make some moves.
Yeah.
Uncomfortable as it was, but sometimes your gut is often quite right.
Oh yeah, that sounds like a bit of a recipe for stagnation as well. Not bringing
Really
that changes. Cool. Well, one of the things we're going to talk about today is part of that. But what our main overarching topic is going to be is leading and doing. And like I said in the book and in the different aspects around that, there's a balance that has to be struck when leading and doing. And especially if you're coming in as a new leader, you've been a solo contributor for a while, you've been used to doing your own thing and getting that in place, and now you've been promoted up into a leadership role. It's very rare that you suddenly stop doing all the stuff that you've been doing previously and just jump into leadership and bang, you're a leader. So Rob, with this kind of thing, how do you balance being or doing the leading as well as doing the doing as a new manager?
It's such a great question. And I know, at least in my history, it's been when a promotion was forthcoming and the job was now provided to me, typically the expectations were, we really want you to do what you were just doing. Now take on this new additional work as leader. And I recall that early in my career. Well, I'm not really quite sure what you mean. I guess I'll figure it out along the way. But pretty quickly, you realize that you don't want to actually ever drop the ball on the expected goals that have been set. So there's really not a lot of leeway in most companies. Like, people would say, look, these are the goals, these are the timelines. We really want you to get them done and keep going along the way and build up your other skills. And what I found was I spent a lot more time than I expected with my direct boss on really understanding truthfully where they wanted me to swim, which lanes they wanted me to be in. Because if I had that alignment, I knew I could then probably ask for a little bit more leeway in so many other areas, or support or help. But if I didn't keep that person pretty much well up to date, I had much less leeway, and I don't blame them. I mean, no one really wants to be surprised. So the
Yeah.
first thing is really understand what your boss wants. You can also, we're always in a period of influence. Every one of us, even if we don't think we are, we are. And it may be sometimes a pretty great opportunity or a smaller one, but I would use those, and influence is really a proper way to describe it, to be able to shed light on the issues I'm dealing with.
Mm.
So keep your boss very well informed. It'll be a lot easier to navigate those change waters.
Yeah, and I think that that's incredibly valuable, and keeping that communication channel open. You build a rapport, you start showing value because there's an ongoing conversation. It really helps in balancing kind of and having the conversation of what should I be doing now versus what was I doing? Can I offload stuff? And it's very important. I can't agree more on that. You mentioned as you were speaking there the word alignment. So speak to us a bit more about how alignment fits into this. What do you mean when you say alignment in your space?
Um, so over the years, and I probably, if you would have asked me that question 25 years ago, I would have had a very different answer than I do now. And I think a lot of it is the nature of how we go through our businesses and our opportunities. But I always found I was pretty early on really responsible for starting to build teams. And it could have been a very small team. And at one time it was a global team. And they all have the same expectations, even if they feel that they're quite different in scope. And that is, we agree on the strategy. We of course agree on the vision and mission, by the way. That's pretty much it. But then we agree on the strategy, the rules of engagement, how we're going to work together, how do we resolve conflict, and and then we of course agree on measuring our outcomes and holding each other accountable. So, and I found if we didn't agree on those concepts, even if we were really busy, we weren't hitting our goals. We had a people that were really unhappy and not very engaged in the organization. We probably had clients that were not really satisfied with the service. And that's always been my experience. So alignment is really understanding how we work together. And I would also contrast, because over the years I've learned alignment is not always agreement. If I had to wait to agree with every single person's view around a table, and there could be 5 of us in a room, and everybody has to be 100% unanimous, we really wouldn't leave the room.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Right? And as much as I love my teams, we had to leave the room, and we had to go and do what we just aligned to. So agreement, the way I see it, is it really is a percentage of times I can look and go, I really do understand why the company is doing this, or why my boss is asking me to do this, or why I'm trying to get other people, my peers, to see it a certain way, and I'll see it their way. But if it's 100%, again, that just assumes we all have the same mindset. And I'd like to have diversity of opinion. If scoring about 70%, 80% of the time I agree, and 20% I don't, I still align 100% of the time. I don't pick and choose my battles and say, well, I didn't agree with that, so I'm not going to align. That's really not how a great company functions.
Yeah, and I think in that disagreement, you can often find some innovation, and someone may have a better idea than what's happening currently.
Yeah.
So, speaking of that meeting, if we're all in the room and getting that alignment, like, how do you sort of decide on that direction to go in? When there are these differing kind of stakeholders and expectations from the business and maybe the team, and people have a different view. Like, if you're leading these teams, how do you decide on that direction?
And so typically, at least again in my experiences, it's been that we really did always have a clear decision-making model, and most companies do. Now, the decision-making model, albeit it really needs to be very clear, it's never healthy if we have no idea who's supposed to make the decision. But really good leaders and ones who are growing into it, and they're perhaps new managers, they're learning the power of collaboration. So we can go back a few decades when somebody would come down from the mountaintop, and it was probably the most senior person, and say, "This is what we're doing, this is how we're doing it, and you're all just here for the ride."
Yeah, the good old ivory tower.
You got it. And you know what? I'm very happy we could put that one in a box in the top shelf. We typically don't work in those environments today. It's proven that they don't really work well. As the new manager, I'd like you to be able to consider how you're going to work with your own peers on decision making, if it's not always so clear, perhaps it's only clear at the highest levels, and you have to create your own, certainly even with your own team. How would you do that? So that's really the next opportunity for a new manager. If you collaborate, people want to be heard. That is the
Mm,
key, I think, to getting people to engage and align to you. If they feel that things were cut off too early, or the decision was made before we walked in the room, that's not a recipe
yeah.
for a great aligned team.
Yeah, and I think it comes back to what you said right in the beginning: is that communication line, that open communication line. You're managing sort of down as well as up, or you're managing side to
Absolutely.
side. It's never, I think, a one way waterfall anymore. It's all over the place. So when you have these disagreements, there are going to be, I suppose, people with noses out of joint, or management might be out of joint, or something might happen there. How do you get the alignment when there's that disagreement in place there?
Early on, we would expect that within any team, I mentioned earlier about the rules of engagement. So the rules of engagement would include, first of all, how do we come to agreement? In other words, is there a true decision maker at the end in that room? And perhaps there's four other people that have been asked to present or to give diverse opinions. So that's the first thing. If there's no clear decision maker, it I would say it is actually very difficult, and it falls
Mm.
upon us, even in middle management. It really falls upon us to say, okay, within the world I'm now asked to manage, does my team have clarity on that? So am I the final decision maker? A tool I've used for years and it's been used for years. What came out of project management is RACI charts.
Mm.
Responsible.
I was thinking about that when you were talking about the decision making and things like that.
And I still use it. Today, I worked in companies for 30 some years. I advise companies today, and I'm still yet to find tools that probably bring out the best conversation about who owns a decision. How do we, of course, hold each other accountable? And a RACI chart, RACI, it's also been extended. I think it's RASCI today as well. There's
Yeah,
different
we use the
versions.
RASCI with supported on the inside
Right.
there.
And so
Yeah.
also very powerful. But I will tell you, those tools, they really help in clarifying our decision-making model. At that point, if we're following it, and I believe it's within all of us to follow a predetermined model that we've agreed to, be accountable and
Mm.
responsible, chances are quite high you're going to come to the alignment that you expected. And sometimes our noses are a little bit of it. We're humans. But you
Yeah.
know what? The 80-20 rule, if I believe pretty much in the vision of the company, I don't have to agree with every decision to know that I'm in the right place.
Yeah, yeah. I think just for our listeners, just in case you're interested and you haven't heard this RACI term before, RASCI term before, just so you know, it details the different roles that we have within any sort of decision where there is who is responsible, so who is actually taking care of it, who's accountable, so whose heads on the chopping block for this. It's the supporting role, which is one of the ones we use, the S that's in there. So who supports the initiative? There's consulted, who gets consulted when something happens, and then informed, who gets informed about the decision that's made as well. So just so everyone is on the same page with that one.
Right.
Uh, Rob, when we were talking before this, you mentioned a really cool phrase, being comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I
Yes.
think that ties in very much to this disagreement. And I think as we're wrapping up on a bit of time, tell me a bit more about being comfortable with being uncomfortable in this space.
I have to thank you for that. I have to give kudos to, I had three mentors in my life, um, and one of them I want to speak of was a lady by the name of Judith Glazer. I was a member of a business group. It's called Vistage in the US and Tech in Canada, um, TEC, and it's really devoted to helping CEOs build their businesses. And as a member, we would get guest speakers. One day, around 2008, this lady by the name of Judith Glazer comes in and speaks to our group. And for 3 hours in a workshop mode, she speaks to us about ways we can build our better communication in a company. At the end of the session, I went up to her and I said, Judith, I have to tell you, I really kind of felt you were just speaking to me, because almost every point that you brought up, I actually acknowledged and said, yeah, I think we have work to do on this. And after 3 hours, it's a lot of points. do you think you'd be willing to work with myself and my team? And she said, let's talk more about it. And there began a association over 5 years. She was a trusted advisor. She was an incredibly wise person on the areas of communication and conflict resolution. And I came to her one time, several years into the mandate, and I said, you know what, this is really difficult with my team right now. There's really a lot of conflict. Some of them aren't even acknowledging or don't want to attend the other one's meeting. It's getting a little nasty there. And I kind of made it all about me. And she said, you know, Rob, this has nothing to do with you, except you have accountability here. But you've got to be prepared to be comfortable being uncomfortable, because all I'm hearing is about your uncomfort. And that's what leadership is. It is going to be a journey. It's never a promise that we're going to be comfortable all the time, but it's an expectation that we're going to learn and grow. And we always hear that. We grow in our comfort zone. But when she told me that, it triggered something in me, a positive trigger to say, you know what, I've been looking at this with the wrong set of lenses. And so forever grateful to Judith. Did pass away a few years ago, missed greatly, incredibly wise person. But that one quote really helped me really reverse course, or change course, I should say, in a much more positive vein.
Fantastic. That's great. I love that. That was awesome. Thank you. Rob, as we wrap up here, tell the listeners a little about what you're working on your side of things.
Great. So today, as an advisor and a speaker, I speak on the leadership journey, and I speak on building strategies that really get executed. So one phrase that I use, and again, it was something I picked up 20 years ago. To me, it's an unknown author of the phrase. I wish I did know. I did hear it from a friend of mine, but I'm not sure he's the one who invented it. And the phrase is, let's build a company that would put our business, let's build a business that would put our business out of business. And it is really a call to action to embrace change. So I do work with clients that are prepared to say, you know what, Rob, I'm not going to tell you you're moving too fast, slow down, as my opening story was. Instead, let's build this so that we're continuously renewing. We don't want to break our core, but we really want to understand how to move to the next generation. And I think that's really where I work today, and helping leaders embrace that and helping them build strategies so that they work that way.
Fantastic. Such a nice work through and loop back with that advice you gave, and or the worst advice you were given, and how that's changed. So that's right. Awesome. Rob, thanks so much for joining us today. For anyone who wants to find out more about Rob's details are in the show notes, so you can hop in there, take a look, jump on over to Rob's website and take a look there. I want to thank you, Rob, for joining us. This has been a fantastic conversation. And I want to thank the listeners for listening to us today, and we will see you next time. Rob, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ross. All the best. Take care.
You too. Ciao.
Ciao.
Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, give our guests a follow and hit the subscribe button for plenty more content like this. I've got a book out covering the type of subjects you've just heard, available on my website, thisisnotwhatisigunnedupfor.com, or over on Amazon. While you're at it, sign up for my newsletter or follow me on Instagram at @RossG_Saunders to get news about blog posts, e-courses, and new episodes as they're released. If you'd like to get me in to speak to your leadership teams or to coach some of your managers, reach out to me via the website or drop me a line over at LinkedIn. Till next time, keep swimming.